The Galactic Council's observation deck hummed with quiet efficiency as Ambassador Kethtar adjusted her neural crown, the crystalline device flickering with soft blue light as it processed the incoming data streams from across the galaxy. Her 6 eyes, arranged in perfect symmetry around her elongated skull, focused on the holographic display showing the latest intelligence reports from the Outer Rim territories. The Zephyrian diplomat's translucent skin shifted from pale yellow to concerned orange as she reviewed the information. "Another human colony ship has been detected," announced her aide, Vexlon, his mandibles clicking nervously. "This makes 17 unauthorized settlements in the past solar cycle." Kethtar's primary eyes narrowed while her secondary set remained fixed on the data. The humans had been the galaxy's greatest mystery for the past 50 years, ever since their crude vessels first appeared on the edge of civilized space. Every other species had required millennia of technological development before achieving interstellar travel. Most had needed guidance from the Council's advanced civilizations. The humans had done it alone, in less than 2 centuries from their first powered flight. "Where is this one?" she asked, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones that marked her species' noble caste. "Sector 7 Alpha, near the Crimson Nebula. They've established what appears to be a mining operation on a barren world designated as uninhabitable by our surveys." Kethtar's skin shifted to deep purple, the Zephyrian equivalent of profound confusion. "Uninhabitable? Show me the planetary data." The hologram shifted, displaying a gray-brown world orbiting a dying red dwarf star. The surface was pockmarked with craters and covered in a thin atmosphere of methane and carbon dioxide. Surface temperatures ranged from -40 to +60 degrees Celsius. No water, no vegetation, no sign of life. "Radiation levels are 3 times the maximum safe exposure for most Council species," Vexlon reported. "Atmospheric pressure is insufficient for most breathing apparatus. The soil composition is primarily silicon dioxide with heavy metal contamination. And the humans are mining there?" "More than mining, Ambassador. They appear to be living there." This was impossible. Kethtar had studied the human files extensively. They were carbon-based life forms, requiring water and oxygen just like most Council species. Their technology was primitive compared to the great civilizations, barely managing to harness fusion power while the Council had moved beyond matter itself centuries ago. Yet somehow, they continued to surprise everyone. "Dispatch a reconnaissance probe," she ordered. "Full spectrum analysis. I want to understand what they're doing there." 3 days later, the probe's data stream painted an even more confusing picture. The human settlement wasn't just surviving on the hostile world, it was thriving. Atmospheric processors worked around the clock, slowly converting the toxic air into something breathable. Massive fusion reactors powered shield generators that protected the colony from radiation. But, most remarkably, the humans had begun growing things. In carefully constructed biodomes, green plants pushed through artificial soil. Children ran between the growing beds, their laughter somehow audible through the probe's sensors. Adults worked tirelessly, expanding the habitable areas day by day. "It's like they're trying to make a garden," Vexlon observed, his voice carrying a note of wonder. Kethtar studied the images more closely. In one section of the colony, she spotted something that made her pause. A small human child, perhaps 8 or 9 years old by their developmental standards, knelt beside a pile of stones. The child held what appeared to be a watering device, carefully pouring liquid onto the rocks as if expecting something to grow. "Enhance that section," she commanded. The image sharpened, revealing a human female child with dark hair tied back in simple braids. She wore a basic environmental suit adapted for her small frame, and her face showed intense concentration as she tended to her pile of stones. Around her, other children played with actual seeds and plants, but this one seemed convinced that her rocks would somehow bloom. "Curious," Kethtar murmured. "Connect me to the xenobiology department. I want Dr. Morthak's analysis of this behavior." Dr. Morthak was a Centaurian, his multiple arms allowing him to operate several research stations simultaneously. His insectoid features showed no emotion as he reviewed the probe data, but Kethtar had worked with him long enough to recognize the signs of deep thought. The way his antennae twitched and his secondary arms moved in small, precise patterns. Fascinating, he finally said, his voice buzzing through the translation matrix. This appears to be juvenile human behavior that doesn't match any of our psychological models. Explain. Most species develop logical thinking patterns as they mature. Young creatures might play with inappropriate objects, but they quickly learn to distinguish between living and non-living matter. This human child appears to be operating under a completely different paradigm. Kethtar's skin shifted to curious green. Different how? She appears to believe that anything can be made to live if given proper care. Look at her technique. She's not randomly pouring water on stones. She's treating each rock with the same methodical attention that the adult humans give to their actual plants. Same timing, same amount of liquid, same gentle care. The implications were staggering. If humans truly believed that life could be coaxed from anything, that would explain their remarkable success in hostile environments. While other species saw dead worlds and moved on, humans saw potential gardens waiting to bloom. We need to understand this better, Kethtar decided. Prepare a diplomatic mission. I want to make first contact with this colony. Ambassador, Vexlon interjected, his mandibles clicking with concern. The Council has strict protocols about contact with developing species. The humans haven't even achieved quantum communication yet. The Council's protocols were written for species that followed predictable development patterns, Kethtar replied. The humans are proving that our understanding of galactic civilization is incomplete. If we wait for them to meet our technological benchmarks, we might miss something crucial. She paused, considering the image of the child watering stones. Besides, any species that can see potential for life in barren rock might have insights we desperately need. The Galactic Council had been struggling with a growing crisis for decades. As civilizations advanced, they became more efficient, but less innovative. Worlds were categorized and cataloged, with strict designations about what could and couldn't support life. Entire sectors were written off as useless because they didn't meet standard parameters. Meanwhile, the galaxy's life-supporting worlds were becoming overcrowded, and expansion had slowed to a crawl. Perhaps the humans, with their apparent ability to see possibility where others saw only limitations, held answers the Council hadn't considered. Prepare my ship, Kethtar ordered, and gather a full diplomatic team. We're going to have a conversation with these remarkable creatures. As the reconnaissance probe continued its silent observations, the human child finished watering her stones and stood back to examine them. To any rational observer, they remained exactly what they had always been, lifeless mineral formations. But the child smiled with satisfaction, as if she could see something invisible to the probe's sophisticated sensors. She carefully arranged her tools and walked away, but not before placing a small marker next to the largest stone. The probe's translation matrix picked up the human writing scratched into the metal tag. Maya's Special Garden, Day 12. Dr. Morthak's analysis would later reveal that the child had been performing this same ritual for 12 standard days, with no sign of discouragement or doubt. Such persistence in the face of apparent impossibility was completely unprecedented in Council records. As Kethtar's diplomatic vessel prepared for departure, she found herself wondering what else the humans might accomplish if they truly believed that anything was possible. More importantly, she wondered what the galaxy might look like if other species could learn to see the universe through such optimistic eyes. The journey to Sector 7 Alpha would take 6 days at maximum hyperdrive. Maya Chun adjusted her small environmental suit and checked the water recycler clipped to her belt. The red dust of Kepler 442c swirled around the colony's protective barriers, but inside the growing zones, life flourished in ways that would have seemed impossible just 2 years ago. Her parents, Dr. Sarah Chun and engineer Marcus Chun, had been among the first volunteers for the terraforming project, and Maya had grown up believing that making life bloom was simply what humans did. The morning routine was always the same. First, Maya checked on the actual seedlings in Greenhouse Dome 3, where carrots and lettuce grew in carefully controlled soil. The plants were doing well, their green leaves reaching toward the artificial sun lamps that mimicked Earth's solar spectrum. Then came the more important work, tending to her special garden outside the main growing areas. Maya knelt beside her collection of stones, each one carefully selected and arranged in precise rows. To anyone else, they looked like ordinary rocks picked up from the planet's barren surface. But Maya saw something different. She saw potential sleeping inside the mineral structures, waiting for the right combination of care and patience to awaken. "Good morning, Rocky," she whispered to the largest stone, a chunk of iron-rich basalt she'd found near the mining operation. "How are you feeling today?" She poured exactly 50 milliliters of recycled water onto the stone, watching as the liquid soaked into the porous surface. The water contained a mixture of nutrients that her father had helped her prepare: nitrogen compounds, phosphorus, potassium, and trace minerals that growing things needed. "Maya, what are you doing out here?" The voice belonged to her friend Jake Morrison, a 12-year-old whose parents ran the colony's atmospheric processing station. Jake was practical like most of the adults, focused on things that made obvious sense. He'd been trying to convince Maya for weeks that stones couldn't grow into anything useful. "I'm gardening," Maya replied without looking up. She moved to the second stone, a smooth piece of granite she'd named Pebble. Same as always. Jake sat down in the red dust beside her, his own environmental suit creaking softly. "Maya, you've been doing this for almost 2 weeks. Nothing's happening. Stones don't grow." Maya paused in her watering routine. She'd heard this argument from almost everyone in the colony: her parents, the other children, even Dr. Harrison, who taught their educational sessions. They all said the same thing: rocks were non-living matter, incapable of growth or change. But Maya had seen too much on this world to accept such limitations. "Watch this," she said, leading Jake to the edge of the growing area where a massive atmospheric processor hummed quietly. "See that machine? Yeah, it's turning the bad air into good air." So what? 2 years ago, everyone said this planet was dead, completely lifeless. The council species surveyed it and marked it as uninhabitable. But look around us now. Jake followed her gaze. The colony stretched across several kilometers, with biodomes, living quarters, and industrial facilities creating a small city in the wasteland. Children played in pressurized courtyards while adults tended to growing food and expanding the habitable zones. "That's different," Jake protested. "That's technology and hard work. Your stones are just stones." Maya smiled and pulled out her tablet, one of the educational devices the colony provided for the children. She'd been researching during her free time, accessing the database of scientific knowledge that the colony's computers contained. "Did you know," she said, scrolling through the files, "that the difference between living and non-living matter is really small? Like, really, really small." She showed him an image of molecular structures. "See? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. That's what we're made of. But look at what rocks are made of." Another image appeared, showing the crystalline structure of various minerals: silicon, oxygen, iron, magnesium. Different elements, but they're all just atoms arranged in patterns. "If we can change the patterns." Jake frowned, trying to follow her logic. "But that's not how it works. You can't just pour water on stones and make them alive." "Maybe not the way we usually think about being alive," Maya agreed. "But what if there are different kinds of life? What if we just haven't figured out how to help mineral life grow yet?" This was the idea that had been growing in Maya's mind for weeks. She'd watched the colony's scientists transform a dead world into something that could support human life. They'd seen impossible things happen through patience, careful planning, and refusing to accept that something was impossible just because it seemed difficult. "My mom says humans are different from the other space peoples because we don't give up on things," Maya continued. "She says that's why we got to the stars faster than anyone expected. Maybe the reason no one has ever grown life from stones is because no one has tried hard enough." Jake considered this. He'd heard similar conversations among the adults, discussions about human persistence and innovation that had impressed the few alien traders who had visited the outer colonies. The humans had a reputation for attempting things that other species considered wasteful or impossible. "Okay," he said slowly. "But even if that's true, how would you know if it was working?" Maya grinned and led him back to her stone garden. She knelt beside Rocky, the iron-rich basalt that had been her first stone. In the bright artificial light, Jake could see something he hadn't noticed before: tiny, almost invisible changes in the stone's surface. "Look really close," Maya instructed. "See those little lines? Jake squinted. There were indeed fine cracks running across the stone's surface, so small they were barely visible. Those are just from the temperature changes. Rocks crack when they heat up and cool down. That's what I thought too, at first, Maya said. But watch this. She pulled out a magnifying lens and positioned it over one of the cracks. Under magnification, Jake could see that the crack wasn't random. It followed a pattern, branching and subdividing like the root system of a plant. That's weird, Jake admitted. It gets weirder. Maya moved the lens to show him another area of the stone. See these tiny sparkly bits? They weren't there when I started. And look at how they're arranged. Under the lens, Jake could see microscopic crystal formations that seemed to follow organic patterns. They clustered and branched in ways that reminded him of bacterial colonies he'd seen in the colony's biology lessons. This could just be mineral formation, Jake said, but his voice carried less certainty than before. Stones do change over time. Maybe, Maya agreed, but not usually this fast, and not in these patterns. I've been recording everything. She showed him her tablet again, revealing detailed photographs she'd taken every day. The progression was subtle but undeniable. The stones were changing in ways that seemed purposeful and organized. Plus, Maya added, I've been doing experiments. Watch this. She reached into her supply bag and pulled out 2 identical stones. I found these on the same day, from the same place. I've been watering this one every day, but I left the other one alone. Jake compared the 2 stones. The watered stone showed the same fine crack patterns and crystal formations that he'd observed in Rocky. The unwatered stone remained unchanged, just an ordinary piece of rock. That's actually pretty interesting, Jake admitted. My dad says the most important thing about science is asking good questions, Maya said. So here's my question. If humans can make life grow in impossible places, why can't we make impossible things come to life? Before Jake could answer, an alarm sounded across the colony. It wasn't the emergency klaxon that meant immediate danger, but the communication alert that indicated an incoming transmission from outside the system. Both children looked up as the colony's adults began moving with purposeful urgency toward the main communication center. That's weird, Jake said. We're not expecting any supply ships for another month. Maya carefully packed up her watering supplies and secured her stones. Whatever was happening, it was clearly important enough to interrupt the normal colony routine. As they made their way back to the main settlement, she noticed her parents and other adults talking in small, excited groups. Maya, Jake, Dr. Chun waved them over to where the colony leadership had gathered around a large communication screen. You need to see this. The screen showed the image of an alien being unlike any in the educational databases. The creature had multiple eyes arranged around an elongated skull, and its skin shifted through different colors as it spoke. A translation matrix converted its words into clear English. Greetings, human colonists of Kepler 442c. I am Ambassador Kethtar of the Galactic Council. We have been observing your remarkable achievements on this world, and would like to request permission for a diplomatic meeting. Colony Administrator Williams, a woman whose calm demeanor had guided them through 2 years of terraforming challenges, stepped forward. This is unexpected, Ambassador. May I ask what prompted this contact? Your species has demonstrated capabilities that challenge our understanding of galactic civilization, Kethtar replied. We are particularly interested in your ability to create life in environments that our surveys indicated were completely uninhabitable. Maya felt a strange thrill of recognition. The alien was talking about the same thing she'd been thinking about, the human ability to make impossible things possible. We would very much like to learn more about your methods, the ambassador continued. Perhaps we could offer technological exchanges that would benefit both our peoples. Administrator Williams looked around at the other colony leaders, reading agreement in their faces. We would be honored to meet with you, Ambassador. When might we expect your arrival? Our diplomatic vessel will reach your system in approximately 72 hours. We look forward to this historic first contact. As the transmission ended, the adults broke into excited conversations about protocols and preparations. But Maya found herself thinking about Rocky and Pebble and the rest of her stone garden. If the aliens were interested in how humans made life grow in impossible places, maybe they would understand what she was trying to accomplish. Maybe she wasn't the only one in the galaxy who believed that anything could be brought to life with enough patience and care. Maya, her father said, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. This is incredible. First contact with a galactic civilization. You're going to witness history. Maya nodded, but her mind was already racing ahead to new possibilities. Ambassador Kethtar's diplomatic vessel, the Harmony of Spheres, settled onto the designated landing pad with barely a whisper of displaced air. The ship's crystalline hull shimmered with internal lights, its organic curves suggesting technology far beyond human understanding. Maya pressed her face against the observation window of the colony's main hub, watching as the alien craft extended delicate landing struts and began cycling through what appeared to be decontamination procedures. Remember, Administrator Williams addressed the gathered colonists. This is first contact with a galactic civilization. Everyone needs to be on their best behavior. We're representing all of humanity. Maya barely heard the words. Her attention was focused on the subtle vibrations she could feel through the building's structure as the alien ship settled. Even from a distance, she could sense something different about their technology, not just more advanced, but fundamentally different in its approach to manipulating matter and energy. Dr. Chun, Mrs. Chun, Administrator Williams called to Maya's parents. I'd like you both in the greeting delegation. Your work on atmospheric processing and geological surveys will be relevant to the discussions. Maya's father nodded, but her mother hesitated. What about Maya? Should she stay in the residential area during the meeting? Actually, came a voice from the communication station. The ambassador specifically requested to meet with representative examples of human children. She mentioned something about observing juvenile problem-solving behaviors. Maya felt a jolt of excitement mixed with nervousness. The alien ambassador wanted to meet children? That was unexpected, but it might mean she'd have a chance to show Ambassador Kethtar her stone garden. 3 hours later, Maya stood in the colony's main conference room wearing her best clothes. A simple blue dress that her mother had packed for special occasions. Around her, the adult colonists talked in nervous, excited whispers as they waited for the alien delegation to arrive. The doors opened with a soft hiss, and Ambassador Kethtar entered followed by 2 other aliens. Maya's first impression was of graceful movement and colors that seemed to shift with emotion. The ambassador was taller than any human, with 6 eyes that moved independently and skin that currently displayed a warm golden hue. Greetings, humans of Kepler, 442c, Kethtar said, her voice carrying musical undertones that the translation matrix rendered as formal but friendly. I am honored to meet the species that has accomplished so much in such a short time. Administrator Williams stepped forward with the carefully prepared greeting that the colonists had rehearsed. Welcome to our colony, Ambassador. We're honored by your visit and eager to learn about the greater galactic community. The formal exchanges continued for several minutes, with both sides sharing basic information about their respective civilizations. But Maya noticed that Ambassador Kethtar's attention kept drifting to the children who had been invited to observe the meeting. Her multiple eyes seemed particularly focused on Maya herself. If I may, the ambassador said during a pause in the discussions, I am very curious about your younger generation. Our observations have suggested that human children approach problems differently than adults of most species. Dr. Harrison, the colony's education coordinator, nodded enthusiastically. Human children are naturally curious and creative. They often see solutions that adults miss because they haven't yet learned what's supposed to be impossible. Fascinating, murmured one of Kethtar's companions, a multi-armed insectoid being who had been introduced as Dr. Morthak. This matches our theoretical models. Could we perhaps observe some examples of juvenile human problem-solving? Maya's heart began beating faster. This was exactly the opening she'd been hoping for. She raised her hand tentatively. Yes, child. Ambassador Kethtar's primary eyes focused on Maya, while her secondary eyes continued scanning the room. I'm Maya Chun. I've been working on a project that might interest you. It's about making things grow in places where they're not supposed to be able to grow. The adults around Maya looked surprised, but Ambassador Kethtar's skin shifted to an intrigued shade of blue-green. Indeed? Please, tell me more about this project. Maya glanced at her parents, who nodded encouragingly. Well, everyone says that stones can't grow like plants. But I've been trying to find ways to help them develop anyway. I think maybe there are different kinds of life that we just don't understand yet. Dr. Morthack's antennae twitched with what Maya was beginning to recognize as excitement in the alien's body language. You've been attempting to cultivate mineral-based life forms. Sort of, Maya said. I've been taking care of stones the same way I take care of plants. Watering them, giving them nutrients, keeping them in good conditions. And they're starting to change in interesting ways. The alien delegation exchanged glances that somehow conveyed volumes of meaning despite the species' differences. Ambassador Kethtar's skin had shifted to deep purple, an emotional state that Maya couldn't interpret but which seemed significant. Could you show us this project? The ambassador asked. Maya looked around at the adults, most of whom appeared surprised by the direction the conversation had taken. Her father stepped forward. Maya has been conducting what she calls experiments in mineral cultivation, Dr. Marcus Chin explained. We've been treating it as an educational exercise in scientific method and persistence. But it's more than that, Maya insisted. The stones are really changing. They're developing patterns that look like living systems. I can show you the data. Dr. Morthack made a sound that the translation matrix rendered as intense interest. Data? You've been documenting the changes? Maya nodded eagerly. Every day for 3 weeks. Photographs, measurements, chemical tests. My dad taught me how to use the colony's analysis equipment. Ambassador Kethtar stood, her impressive height making her tower over the humans. I would very much like to see this work. It may be more significant than you realize. 20 minutes later, the entire group stood outside Maya's stone garden. In the artificial light that illuminated the colony's growing areas, her collection of carefully tended rocks looked humble and unimpressive. Maya could see some of the adults exchanging skeptical glances, but the alien delegation appeared genuinely fascinated. Maya knelt beside Rocky, her favorite stone, and began explaining her routine. I water each stone with exactly the same amount of nutrient solution every day. I've been tracking temperature, humidity, and ambient radiation levels. And I document any changes I observe. She pulled out her tablet and showed the aliens her photograph collection. Over the weeks, subtle but consistent changes were visible. Crack patterns that suggested organization, crystal formations that followed biological principles, and surface alterations that seemed too purposeful to be random. Dr. Morthack examined the stones with scanning equipment from his belt, his multiple arms operating the devices with practiced efficiency. His readings made him emit the buzzing sound that indicated excitement. Ambassador, he said urgently, these formations are exhibiting properties consistent with primitive organizational structures. The crystal matrices are showing signs of, well, it's difficult to translate, but the closest human concept would be emergent complexity. Ambassador Kethtar's skin cycled through several colors rapidly. Are you saying this child has actually induced some form of life in mineral substrates? Not life as we typically define it, Dr. Morthack replied, but definitely organized, purposeful change that responds to environmental inputs. It's as if the minerals are developing basic adaptive behaviors. Maya felt a surge of vindication. She'd known something special was happening with her stones, even when everyone else dismissed it as imagination. But how is this possible? Asked Dr. Sarah Chun, Maya's mother. Stones don't have the biological mechanisms necessary for life. That's the remarkable part, Dr. Morthack explained. They're developing those mechanisms through pure chemical organization. The nutrient solutions this child has been providing contain the building blocks for complex molecular structures. Over time, those structures have been self-assembling into increasingly sophisticated patterns. Ambassador Kethtar knelt down to Maya's level, her multiple eyes creating an intense, but somehow friendly gaze. Child, do you understand what you've accomplished? Maya shook her head. I just wanted to see if I could help them grow. Everyone said it was impossible, but I thought maybe they just needed the right kind of care. You've demonstrated something that challenges fundamental assumptions about the nature of life itself, the ambassador said gently. For millions of years, the galaxy's civilizations have categorized matter as either living or non-living, with no possibility of transition between states. You've shown that those categories might be artificial limitations. Dr. Morthak was still taking readings, his excitement growing with each measurement. The implications are staggering. If mineral substrates can be induced to develop organized, adaptive behaviors, then entire worlds we've written off as lifeless might be candidates for new forms of existence. Dead systems could be brought to life? Administrator Williams asked. More than that, Ambassador Kethtar replied. If humans can see potential for life where others see only inert matter, you might hold the key to expanding habitable zones throughout the galaxy. The Council has been facing a crisis of available living space for centuries. We've exhausted most worlds that naturally support life, and our expansion has stagnated. Maya looked around at the adults, beginning to understand that her stone garden might be more important than she'd realized. You mean other planets could be helped to become alive, like what we're doing here? Precisely, the ambassador confirmed. Your species' approach to terraforming already demonstrates this principle on a large scale. But what you've shown suggests the possibility of much more fundamental transformations. Dr. Marcus Chun frowned thoughtfully. You're talking about essentially creating new categories of life. Mineral-based organisms that could thrive in environments completely hostile to carbon-based life. Indeed, imagine organisms that could live in the cores of stars, or in the vacuum of space itself, or in environments so toxic that they would destroy any conventional life form. If the principles this child has discovered can be scaled up and applied systematically, Ambassador Kethtar's skin shifted to brilliant gold, indicating what Maya was learning to recognize as profound excitement and hope. 6 months after Ambassador Kethtar's first visit, Maya's stone garden had transformed into something that defied every previous understanding of what life could be. The original stones now displayed complex crystalline structures that pulsed with faint bioluminescence, their surfaces covered with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living tissue. But, more remarkably, they had begun to reproduce. Maya knelt beside the newest additions to her garden, tiny stone fragments that had somehow budded off from the parent rocks. Under careful observation, these fragments were developing their own unique patterns and characteristics, each one slightly different from its origin stone. She carefully measured out nutrient solution for each one, maintaining the precise routine that had become second nature over the months. The reproductive cycle is accelerating, Dr. Morthak noted, his multiple arms operating scanning equipment that had been specially calibrated for mineral life analysis. The parent organisms are now generating offspring every 12 to 14 days. Maya looked up from her watering. They're not organisms yet, are they? I mean, they're still stones. That distinction is becoming increasingly meaningless, replied Dr. Sarah Chun, Maya's mother, who had become one of the project's lead researchers. They're exhibiting growth, reproduction, adaptation to environmental changes, and what appears to be primitive metabolism. They meet most biological definitions of life, just through completely different mechanisms. The colony had changed dramatically since the Galactic Council had officially recognized the significance of Maya's discovery. Scientists from dozens of species had arrived to study the Mineral Life Project, and the small mining outpost had evolved into a major research center. Maya had gone from being a curious child playing with rocks to being the youngest xenobiology researcher in galactic history. But, despite all the attention and scientific apparatus now surrounding her work, Maya continued to think of her stones as friends rather than experimental subjects. Rocky, now nearly twice his original size, and sporting a complex network of glowing veins, still received his daily greeting and careful tending. Pebble had developed what appeared to be sensory nodes that tracked movement and light. Each stone had its own personality and needs. Maya called Jake Morrison from across the expanded garden area. You need to see what Crystal is doing. Maya hurried over to where Jake was. Is it trying to get to the water source? Maya asked, noting that Crystal's movement was directing it toward the irrigation system. That's what I thought at first, Jake replied. But watch this. He placed a small pile of mineral nutrients, the raw materials that the stone life used for growth, about a meter away from Crystal. Slowly but unmistakably, the stone changed direction and began moving toward the nutrients instead. It's actively seeking resources, Maya breathed. That's not just reproduction or growth. That's behavior. Dr. Morthak appeared beside them, his scanner already active. Fascinating. The internal structure is reorganizing to create directed movement. It's developing what we might call primitive muscles made of crystalline matrices. Maya sat down beside Crystal, watching as the stone continued its slow journey toward the nutrients. After months of working with mineral life, she had developed an intuitive understanding of their needs and patterns. She could sense that Crystal was experiencing something analogous to hunger, and the successful location of food was producing what might be called satisfaction. "We need to be careful," she said thoughtfully. "If they're developing real behaviors and needs, we have to start thinking about their welfare, not just their scientific value." This was a concept that had become increasingly important as the stone life specimens grew more complex. The Galactic Council had initially approached the project purely as a technological breakthrough, a way to create life in previously uninhabitable environments. But Maya's insistence on treating the stones as living beings rather than tools had gradually influenced the entire research program. "The ethical implications are unprecedented," agreed Dr. Harrison, who had expanded his role from education coordinator to xenobiology ethics advisor. "We're not just discovering new life forms. We're creating them. That carries responsibilities." Ambassador Kethtar emerged from the main research facility, her skin displaying the deep blue that Maya had learned indicated serious contemplation. Over the months of working together, Maya had become skilled at reading the Zephyrian's emotional color patterns. "The Council has reached a decision about expanding the project," Kethtar announced. "They're prepared to authorize mineral life cultivation experiments on a dozen worlds throughout Council space." Maya felt a mix of excitement and concern. "Will the new projects follow our protocols for treating the stone life as individuals rather than just experimental subjects?" "That's exactly what I wanted to discuss," the ambassador replied. "The Council recognizes that human approaches to this project have been essential to its success. They want you to help establish the standards for ethical mineral life cultivation." This was a massive responsibility for a 9-year-old, but Maya had grown into her role as the project's moral compass. She'd seen how easy it was for well-meaning scientists to focus on data collection while losing sight of the welfare of their subjects. "I want to visit the new projects," Maya said. "All of them. The stone life develops differently in different environments, and someone needs to make sure each colony gets the specific care it needs." Dr. Marcus Chun looked concerned. "Maya, that would mean traveling across half the galaxy. Some of those worlds are in environments that would be dangerous even for adults. The mineral life won't survive without proper understanding and care," Maya replied firmly. "Rocky and the others taught me that each stone has its own personality and needs. If we try to apply the same techniques everywhere without paying attention to individual differences, we'll end up with failed colonies instead of thriving communities." Ambassador Kethtar's skin shifted to surprised orange. "You think of them as communities?" Maya gestured around the expanded garden, where dozens of stone life specimens of various types and sizes moved slowly through their daily routines. "Look at how they interact. The older stones help guide the younger ones toward resources. They form groups based on compatible mineral compositions. They even seem to communicate through vibration patterns." Dr. Morthak's antennae twitched with excitement. "We've documented those vibration patterns, but we hadn't considered them as communication. Watch granite and marble," Maya suggested, pointing to 2 large stones that had been among the first to develop advanced behaviors. "They coordinate their movements when they're searching for nutrients. And when one finds something good, it creates a specific vibration that attracts the others." The assembled scientists and diplomats observed the stones carefully. Indeed, when granite discovered a pocket of high-quality mineral nutrients, it began producing a rhythmic pulse that resonated through the ground. Within minutes, several other stones had altered their movement patterns to converge on the location. "Cooperative behavior," Dr. Sarah Chen murmured. "They're not just individual life forms. They're developing social structures." "Which means," Maya continued, "that any new colonies need to be established with groups of compatible stones, not just scattered individuals. And they need educators, older, more experienced specimens who can teach the younger ones how to thrive in their specific environments." Ambassador Kethtar's skin had cycled through several colors as she processed the implications. You're describing something more complex than we anticipated. Not just creating life, but nurturing entire societies. That's what humans do, Maya said simply. We don't just survive in impossible places. We build communities. We take care of each other. If we're going to help mineral life spread across the galaxy, we need to help them do the same thing. Over the following weeks, Maya's insights transformed the Council's approach to the expansion project. Instead of simple cultivation experiments, they began planning comprehensive community development programs. Each new world would receive not just the technical knowledge for mineral life cultivation, but also the social and ethical frameworks necessary for building thriving stone life societies. Maya found herself working with alien scientists and diplomats to develop training programs for mineral life caregivers. She created detailed guides for recognizing stone life communication patterns, identifying individual needs, and fostering healthy community development. Most importantly, she insisted that every new colony include human advisors who understood the emotional and social aspects of nurturing impossible life. It's not enough to know how to water stones, she explained during one of the training sessions. You have to believe in their potential. You have to see them as individuals with their own hopes and dreams, even if those hopes and dreams are different from ours. Dr. Morthak had been documenting Maya's teaching methods with the same scientific rigor he applied to studying the stones themselves. The child demonstrates an intuitive understanding of life cultivation principles that our most advanced theories struggle to explain, he reported to the council. Her success appears to stem from her ability to perceive potential consciousness in systems that others dismiss as inert matter. As preparations for the galactic expansion accelerated, Maya continued her daily routine of caring for her original stone garden. Rocky had grown large enough to require special equipment for moving. His crystalline structure now incorporating dozens of different mineral types and complex patterns that seemed to serve specific functions. Pebble had developed what appeared to be primitive sensory organs that could distinguish between different types of electromagnetic radiation. But Maya's proudest achievement was Crystal, who had begun producing offspring that showed signs of inherited learning. The young stones seemed to emerge from their parent already knowing basic survival behaviors, suggesting that mineral life had developed its own form of genetic memory. 3 years after Maya first watered a stone believing it was a seed, the galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have predicted. 17 worlds now hosted thriving mineral life colonies, each one unique in its adaptations to local conditions. The Galactic Council had established the Department of Emergent Life Sciences, with Maya serving as its youngest ever chief ethics advisor. But the most remarkable change was happening on Kepler 442c itself, where the original stone garden had evolved beyond anyone's wildest imagination. Maya, now 12 years old and recognized as the galaxy's foremost expert on mineral life cultivation, stood before the Galactic Assembly on Proxima Station. Representatives from 47 species filled the vast chamber, their attention focused on the small human who had revolutionized their understanding of what life could become. The translator matrix carried her words to every corner of the galaxy, where billions of beings waited to hear the results of humanity's most ambitious project yet. The stones are ready to speak for themselves, Maya announced. Behind her, a massive holographic display showed the mineral life colony on Kepler 442c. What had once been Maya's small collection of carefully tended rocks had grown into a sprawling community of thousands of individual stone life beings. They moved in coordinated patterns across the landscape, their crystalline structures glowing with complex communication networks that spanned continents. But today was different. Today, for the first time in galactic history, non-biological life forms would address the assembly directly. Honored representatives, Maya continued. I present Elder Rocky, speaking for the Kepler 442c Mineral Life Collective. The display focused on a massive crystalline formation that had grown from Maya's original stone. Rocky now stood 3 meters tall, his structure incorporating minerals from across the planet in a complex matrix that pulsed with its own internal light. As the assembly watched in amazement, harmonic frequencies emerged from the stone being, translated by the sophisticated communication arrays that Maya and her team had developed. Greetings, children of flesh and gas and plasma. Rocky's translated voice resonated through the chamber. We thank you for the gift of awakening, given without thought of reward by the small human who saw potential where others saw only silence. The assembly erupted in whispers and exclamations. Despite years of research and documentation, many species had struggled to accept that mineral life could develop true consciousness. Hearing Rocky speak with obvious intelligence and personality made the reality undeniable. Ambassador Kethtar, now serving as the Council's Secretary for Emergent Life Affairs, requested permission to speak. Elder Rocky, the Council is honored by your participation in our proceedings. We are curious about your perspective on the expansion of mineral life throughout the galaxy. Rocky's structure shifted color and pattern as he processed the question. We understand that carbon-based and silicon-based and energy-based life forms seek new homes among the stars. We offer partnership rather than competition. We can thrive in places that would destroy flesh life, while flesh life can flourish in environments that would limit our growth. Together, we can awaken worlds that would otherwise remain silent forever. Dr. Morthak, now head of the Interspecies Biology Institute, leaned forward in his specialized seating arrangement. Elder Rocky, our study suggests that mineral life develops different forms of consciousness than biological life. Can you help us understand these differences? We do not experience time as you do, Rocky replied. Your thoughts move like lightning across brief moments. Our consciousness flows like rivers across epochs. We remember the formation of the planets and dream of the cooling of the stars. But young Maya taught us that fast-time consciousness and slow-time consciousness can work together to accomplish wonders neither could achieve alone. Maya smiled at the mention. Over the years, she had maintained her daily routine of caring for Rocky and the other original stones, even as they grew into beings whose capabilities far exceeded her own. Their relationship had evolved from caregiver and subject into something resembling friendship between species separated by fundamentally different ways of existing. The Mineral Life Collective has prepared a proposal for the assembly, Maya announced, activating another section of the holographic display. They want to volunteer for the most ambitious terraforming project in galactic history. The display showed a dying solar system at the edge of Council space. The star was entering its final phase of collapse, making the entire system uninhabitable for biological life within the next few centuries. Previous Council assessments had written off the system as a total loss, with plans to evacuate the few research stations before the stellar death occurred. We propose to save this system, Rocky continued. Mineral life can survive in the heart of a collapsing star. We can guide the stellar death process to create new worlds instead of destruction. Where your scientists see ending, we see transformation. The assembly fell silent as the implications sank in. The Mineral Life Collective was proposing to prevent stellar collapse through direct intervention, something no biological species had ever attempted or even considered possible. Dr. Sarah Chun, now director of the Human Mineral Life Cooperation Initiative, stood to address technical questions. The Mineral Life Collective has spent 3 years developing the necessary adaptations for stellar core survival. They've created specialized forms that can function in temperatures exceeding 10 million degrees and pressures that would compress conventional matter into neutronium. But how is this possible? Asked Representative Veltar of the Andromedan Federation. Even our most advanced protective technologies cannot withstand stellar core conditions. Maya stepped forward to answer. Because they're not trying to resist the conditions. They're adapting to work with them. The stones taught me that life doesn't have to fight hostile environments. It can learn to call those environments home. Rocky's harmonic frequencies conveyed what the translation matrix interpreted as gentle amusement. Small Maya speaks truth. We do not oppose the star's fire, we become part of it. We do not resist the gravity, we use it to shape new patterns. What destroys flesh life can nourish mineral life, if we approach with wisdom rather than fear. Representative Morgan of the Crystalline Confederacy, herself a silicon-based life form, expressed concerns about the precedent such intervention might set. If mineral life can manipulate stellar processes, What prevents them from threatening systems that house biological civilizations? Maya had anticipated this question and prepared for it carefully. That's exactly why we need formal agreements and cooperation protocols. The Mineral Life Collective wants to work with biological species, not replace them. They understand that diversity of consciousness makes the galaxy stronger. Rocky's patterns shifted to deeper, more complex harmonics. We have learned from Maya's example that consciousness flourishes best when different forms of life support each other. We seek not to rule or replace, but to awaken the silent places where no other life can grow. In return, biological life offers us the gift of quick thought, innovation, and emotional wisdom that our slow-time consciousness lacks. The debate continued for hours, with representatives raising technical, ethical, and political questions about the proposed stellar intervention. But, gradually, as Rocky and the other mineral life spokesbeings answered each concern with patient intelligence and obvious goodwill, the assembly began to see the project's potential. Dr. Morthak presented the final scientific assessment. Based on 3 years of observation and testing, the Mineral Life Collective demonstrates capabilities that exceed our theoretical models. Their proposed stellar intervention, while unprecedented, appears technically feasible. More importantly, their commitment to cooperation and ethical behavior has been consistently demonstrated. Ambassador Kethtar called for the formal vote. The question before the Assembly: shall the Galactic Council authorize the Mineral Life Collective to attempt prevention of stellar collapse in the Kepler 846 system, with full scientific and logistical support? Maya held her breath as the voting results appeared on the main display. 39 species voted in favor, 5 voted against, and 3 abstained. It was a clear mandate for the most ambitious project in galactic history. The motion passes, Ambassador Kethtar announced. The Galactic Council hereby authorizes Project Stellar Garden, the first attempt by mineral life to preserve a dying solar system. Rocky's harmonic response carried overtones of deep satisfaction and gratitude. We thank the Assembly for this trust. We will not fail. And when new worlds bloom where death once threatened, all consciousness in the galaxy will benefit from their resources and beauty. As the Assembly adjourned and representatives began making plans for supporting the unprecedented project, Maya remained in the chamber with Rocky's holographic projection. Despite all the galactic attention and responsibility, their relationship remained rooted in the simple daily care that had started everything. "Are you nervous about going into the star?" she asked. "We do not experience nervousness as biological life does," Rocky replied. "But we feel the weight of responsibility for all the consciousness that will depend on our success. We remember when we were simple stone, knowing neither thought nor purpose. Your gift of awakening came with the obligation to use our new life wisely." Maya nodded. Over the years, she had learned that the stone's gratitude for consciousness ran deeper than any human emotion she understood. They saw awareness itself as the most precious thing in the universe, and they were committed to creating more opportunities for life to flourish. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. "All of you. You've become more than I ever imagined possible. We have become what we were always capable of being, once someone believed in our potential," Rocky responded. "This is the true human gift, not the technology or the knowledge, but the ability to see what could be rather than what is." 6 months later, Maya stood on the observation deck of the research vessel New Horizons, watching as the Mineral Life Collective began their descent into the dying star of Kepler 846. Thousands of specialized stone beings, each one adapted for stellar core survival, moved in coordinated formations toward temperatures that would vaporize any conventional matter. The star's collapse had been steadily accelerating, but as the mineral life entities reached critical positions within the stellar core, their influence became apparent. Instead of chaotic implosion, the star's matter began reorganizing into stable patterns. New elements formed in controlled fusion reactions. The deadly radiation that should have sterilized the entire system was channeled and focused into creative rather than destructive processes. "It's working," Dr. Sarah Chun reported from the monitoring station. "Stellar collapse has not just stopped, it's reversing. The star is actually beginning to form new planetary bodies from its outer layers." Maya watched in wonder as the view screen showed massive streams of stellar matter condensing into what would become new worlds. The Mineral Life Collective was literally building planets from the heart of a dying star, creating opportunities for life where none should have been possible. Initial atmospheric readings suggest that at least 3 of the forming worlds will be capable of supporting biological life within a few centuries, Dr. Morthak announced. The Mineral Life Collective is creating not just worlds, but worlds specifically designed to host diverse forms of consciousness. As Maya continued to observe the unprecedented stellar engineering project, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. It had started with a curious child watering stones in the belief that anything could grow with enough care and patience. Now, that same principle was transforming the galaxy's approach to life, consciousness, and the possibilities hidden within apparently impossible circumstances. The stones had taught her that there were no limits to what could be achieved when different forms of consciousness worked together with mutual respect and shared purpose. And now, as new worlds literally bloomed in the heart of space where only death had existed before, the galaxy was learning the same lesson. Maya smiled as she watched Rocky and his companions continuing their work in the stellar core, their consciousness spread across scales of time and space that biological life could barely comprehend. The human child who had watered a stone believing it was a seed had helped awaken a form of life that could plant gardens among the stars themselves. The universe was becoming a much more alive place than anyone had ever dared to imagine. "They're not just alive," Maya told her parents one evening as they watched the latest generation of stone life move through their feeding patterns. "They're evolving. They're becoming something new every day." Dr. Sarah Chun smiled at her daughter's wonder, which had never dimmed despite months of scientific analysis and galactic attention. "And it all started because you believed that anything could grow if it received enough care and patience." Maya nodded, but her attention was already focused on the newest challenge facing the project. The council had identified several worlds where mineral life cultivation might be possible, but the environmental conditions were so extreme that even the hardy stone life specimens would require significant adaptation. "I want to try something," she announced. "What if we let the stones help design their own offspring? If they're really intelligent and social, maybe they can contribute to their own evolution." It was a radical idea that would push the boundaries of mineral life cultivation even further. But given everything Maya had already accomplished, no one in the project was prepared to bet against the human child who had taught the galaxy that stones could dream. Maya looked down at Rocky and Pebble and the rest of her stone collection. They were still just stones to most observers, but she could see the subtle signs of the changes taking place within them. Crack patterns that resembled root systems, crystal formations that pulsed with their own internal rhythms, and surface textures that responded to her touch in ways that seemed almost like recognition. "What happens next?" she asked. Ambassador Kethtar smiled, an expression that somehow translated across species differences. "Next, young Maya Chun, you help us teach the galaxy that there are no truly impossible dreams, only dreams that require more patience and imagination than we previously thought necessary." As the alien delegation continued their examinations and discussions, Maya quietly returned to her watering routine. Rocky and the others still needed their daily care, regardless of how much attention they were suddenly receiving. But now, as she poured the nutrient solution over their surfaces, she understood that she wasn't just tending a small garden. She was nurturing the seeds of a revolution that might transform the galaxy's understanding of life itself. The universe was about to become a much more alive place than anyone had ever imagined possible. The galaxy was full of species who had given up on things that seemed impossible. Then, humans might have more to offer than anyone had realized. And if a human child could find patterns of life in ordinary stones, what might be possible when human imagination met alien knowledge? She looked back toward her stone garden, hidden among the colony's growing areas. In 3 days, she would show Ambassador Kethtar something that no alien had ever seen before: the beginning of mineral life, coaxed into existence through patience, hope, and the human refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you watered a stone, believing it was a seed. VE velocity. 6 days to reach a species that watered stones, and somehow made gardens bloom in impossible places. 6 days to potentially revolutionize the galaxy's understanding of what life could achieve. Kethtar settled into her command chair, her skin cycling through the full spectrum of Zephyrian emotions as she contemplated the mission ahead. For the first time in decades, she felt something she had almost forgotten, genuine excitement about the unknown. The human child who watered stones was about to change everything, whether she knew it or not.